It's all about being an expert at something and thinking outside the box. And it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. And you can either do it in this amount of time or this amount of time. And if you're doing it in this amount of time, that means you're wasting time in between, acts of your study and your research to learn how to be good at something. If you're doing it in this short amount of time, it means you're doing it constantly. And I think constant, consistent, studious academia is the most important thing in learning to become whatever it is you want to become.
Hey, y'all, this is the Fishing Business Podcast. I'm your host, Angie Thompson, and I appreciate you investing an hour of your wild and precious life with us today. And you're not going to regret it because our guest is really a neat guy. Jake Latendresse is the guest today. Jake is a storyteller. He's a creator and a storyteller. He understands how to take photographs and how to shoot video that will strike you right in the heart and make you never forget what you saw. And all of us can learn from that. And you can get better at it if you're not already good at it. So that's why I had Jake on today. All of us are out here in these streets trying to improve our social media, improve our brand, tell better stories. And Jake is a guy that can give us very concrete advice about how to do that and why we want to do that. So here we go, y'all. Jake Latendresse. This is going to be good. All right. So, Jake, before we got started here, we were talking and you mentioned that you've done a lot of podcasts, and I'm sort of disappointed because I was hoping I would be the first one to show Jake, the incredible Jake Latendresse, to the world, but I'm late to the party.
Well, most everything that I've done has been associated to the hunting world. So this is probably the first fishing podcast, fishing related podcast that I've done. So you're not late to the party.
All right, right on.
Let's get this party started.
Okay. Well, I in the introduction, I said that you are a videographer for the Bassmaster Elite Series, amongst all these other incredible things you do. I think of you as just a creator, and I know that you're a very, very good storyteller, and you know how to tell a story in person, and you know how to tell a story visually. But I wanted to start by having you explain to everybody what it is you do and what you're trying to accomplish.
Yeah, so my media company is a multimedia company. We direct, we produce, we edit, we film, we photograph, we brand, we market, we promote, all those things that, come in today's day and age of digital marketing and all these different platforms that exist. Is, it's something that's very important in all facets of the world, right? Both with life and in business. So yeah, we promote brands, we promote people, we create creative content for those people and those brands. And sometimes we just shoot film, sometimes we just shoot photos, and sometimes we do, digital graphics and everything in between. So my responsibility is to make sure that we identify with people that hire us to help them market and brand whatever their identity and take it in the right direction. I've been doing this now for 22 years. Believe it or not, I've actually been with Bassmaster Elite now this is my 10th season to be with Bassmaster.
Oh, I can't believe that.
I can't believe that either. And
wow.
When you brought up the word storytelling, this is going to come full circle in relation to you too, because, people that we live in a very small world, and people that you are very, very close to are the people that really taught me how to storytell. And it comes directly out of the Jerry McKinnis family tree. So It's really important.
Boy, it is. And, I'm always trying to emphasize that with the people who are listening to this, because everybody seems like, with social media, everybody becomes a creator. right? And some people are really comfortable with that role and and how to do that, and some people aren't. And I get a lot of feedback from people that kind of can't figure out, how to be better at it. But I don't know that I can't imagine that you weren't ever not good at it, Jake. You seem like you just so natural to you.
Well, I appreciate that. I think everyone has to come to terms with certain things about themselves before they become particularly in front of a camera. If you're promoting your own business or you're a spokesperson for a brand or a company, you have to be comfortable with yourself. And I think to be comfortable with yourself, you have to come to terms with certain things about your own personal insecurities so that you're not reserved when you come on camera or you come on into a microphone, because you have to speak clearly and precisely and honestly, right?
Yeah, golly, that is no one's ever said that. That is so insightful. Really, it is that you have to be comfortable with yourself, and be confident in yourself, don't you think?
You have to know what you're talking about. And to know what you're talking about, you have to have done it for a long time. And for you to have done it for a long time, which means you have to be consistent with what you're doing and the relationships that you build with people and brands in the industry that you live in to get to that point. I mean, without trust, no one's going to touch you with a 10-foot pole. Yeah. So, if you have confidence, like you said earlier, then you're going to gain more assets from that because people want you to be a part of their team because you're comfortable with yourself.
That's right. Gosh, I love that. All right. So before we get any deeper, take me all the way back to the Pearl Farm and tell us about your background and how you got to where you are right now.
The Pearl Farm. I mean, it's really interesting because, my dad was a pearl farmer. He was the only successful pearl farmer in North America from the beginning up until now. No one's ever been able to replicate or achieve what he did in the pearl industry. And how that relates to what I do now, he got a lot of attention from television production companies like 60 Minutes, 2020, ABC, all the major network affiliates, and even National Geographic. He still to this day, I believe, has the longest written feature article in National Geographic history about him and what he did in the pearl industry. So, I was actually very fascinated with art. Pearls are a natural organic gem. It's the only gem in the world produced by a living organism. Everything else is created by pressure and heat and time. And I've always been, involved in natural resources because of that. And because of my dad's position in life, business-wise, it put him on Kentucky Lake on the Tennessee River system, which is where I grew up. And that allowed me to learn the foundation of what I have today about hunting and fishing, which is something, I mean, when I was a kid, I was an artist. I drew, colored pencil. I mean, I'm always fascinated in your paintings, Angie, because I can relate to it because I know what you put into that work and how difficult it is to create reflection on water with the medium that you're using in your art. So, it's fascinating to me. But being in art, I remember when I was about 12 years old, I was at a trade show in Tucson, Arizona with my dad. We were selling pearls, and he told me, he goes, your art, you're going to make a living one day with your art. You're very creative. This is the direction you're going to go in life. And lo and behold, little did I know I was going to pick up a broadcast video camera one day, start producing outdoor television shows. And here we are, doing a podcast with you talking about it.
Well, and the Pearl Farm was right on Kentucky Lake, right? Is it still there?
It's at Birdsong Marina on Kentucky Lake on the Benton County side of the Tennessee River.
Is it still there?
It is. We don't own it. We sold it to the guy that owns Birdsong Marina, and he
Okay.
uses it as a museum
Oh,
piece now. And he does tours, pontoon boat tours, and all that stuff on
that
there.
is so cool. I loved when you told me that. I was fascinated with that story because I actually never really thought of pearls as coming out. I thought they all came out of Japan or somewhere over there. So it was really fascinating to hear about all that. And you grew up on the water and you grew up hunting and fishing, right?
And my dad was the president of the Chamber of Commerce for Benton County when the very first BASS tournament came to Kentucky Lake, and he was the guy that handled the contract um, for that entire event. And I believe that was in either the late '60s or very early
I
1970s.
bet that's right. I bet that's right.
Mhm.
Wow. So
Yeah.
okay. So what does that just blows my mind. You have so many connections to this world. How did you start?
I think Bill Dance was like 18 years old and he won that tournament.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's crazy.
That crazy.
Lord, yes. I can't imagine dance that age. I can't imagine what that must have been like. So how did you become, so you were interested in art, you became interested in video production through your experiences with your dad, but then there's a big jump from being interested in it to doing what you're doing now, because there's not very many people that can make their living shooting the outdoors. So how did that go?
Yeah, so I've always taken pictures. I have stacks of pictures of when I was a kid, out duck hunting or fishing, bass fishing. I still have a picture of the first big bass I ever caught
Oh,
when I was like 11 or 12 years old. But I've always taken pictures with Polaroids or Instamatic cameras, 35 millimeters. And when I moved to Colorado, I took up rock and ice climbing,
oh.
and I had a mentor here who was an ambassador for the apparel brand Patagonia,
Mhm.
and he and I used to travel around the world together as I got better at ice climbing, and I would take photos of him with a Leica camera. There was a high end camera at the time shooting a color slide film, and my very first photo that ever got published made the cover of the North Face catalog, which at that time in the print world, that was like getting a cover on National Geographic or
Absolutely.
and I got really really lucky. It was a neat shot that I took in Alaska up in the Denali Range, but that was my very first published photo, and it built my confidence up to the level to where I said, man, I got a $3,000 check for it and a huge box of North Face gear, and I thought, this is how I want to make my living. So I started shooting more photos. I started shooting for Patagonia. I was shooting for some other apparel companies in the
Mhm.
climbing world, particularly in the alpine winter alpine world. And I'd always loved hunting and fishing. So I thought to myself, well, I really want to morph this into what I really love, which is being in the hunting and fishing world. So I went and I saved my money. It cost me $6,000 at the time. I saved my money. I bought a Sony PD-150, which was a small broadcast quality standard definition video camera at the time, and I started videoing hunts. I would invite people, writers for the North American Whitetail magazine, and different media personnel like that, invite them to my home in Nebraska, and I would film their hunts and then send them to television producers. And Jay Gregory was the very first person. He had a TV show called The Wild Outdoors, and he came up with the juries. He was one of the top bow hunters in the world at the time, and so he hired me and gave me my very first crack at broadcast television.
How cool is that? That's awesome. And then you started working with Shannon Nardi, or somewhere along the line, you started working with Shannon Nardi in the dog retriever world, right? Shooting for
Mhm.
her.
Yeah, the next job after I got a job with Jay and produced a few TV shows, I went to Stuttgart, Arkansas, and contacted the producer, the video producer down there, Jim Ronquist at RNT, Rich and Tone Duck Calls. And he hired me to film duck hunts for them. And then I started tapping into Water Dog. That's where I met Steve Bowman. That's where I met Shannon Nardi, the producer of Water Dog TV. And that was Bowman's, the first year of Water Dog, as you well know.
Right.
Steve Bowman was the host of the show. And I started, I was a regular participant on the Water Dog TV website on their forum. And that was the first, remember way back when in the Stone Age of social media, that was really when social media started.
Right.
So anyway, Shannon came out to Nebraska and did a feature on my dog, my Chesapeake named Tanner at the time. And then she found out that I could film. So she hired me to start shooting for Water Dog. And then of course I met Matt and Mike and, just fell into the whole McInnes family. And that's really where I owe my entire career.
So just to kind of set the scene up for everybody. So the McInnes family runs JM Associates in Little Rock, Arkansas, outdoor producers that have been produced almost everything there is to produce in the outdoors over the years. And Jerry McInnes founded that, and his kids all work there. Shannon Nardi is his daughter, Matt McInnes, Hoplitzweier. He goes by Hoplitzweier. He's his son, Mike McInnes, and he also has a son named Mark McInnes, who's a musician in California. All very creative and really, really good, incredible production people who really understand the craft. And through that relationship with Shannon, then you started working for Bassmaster as a cameraman, right?
Yeah, she introduced me to Mike, and Mike introduced me to Wes Miller. Wes Miller hired me to become one of their camera guys. And at that time, there was just 5 of us. There was Carrie Barrett, Wes Miller, Brian and Rick Mason, and myself.
Yeah.
And it was a small crew, and I was the new guy in, extremely nervous because everything I had done was really just kind of freelance, one camera, one guy filming, hunts.
Yeah.
And when I moved into the bass world, all of a sudden they're like, I didn't know what a 2-shot was. I didn't know any of the technicalities. I didn't know, we were shooting interviews on stage with Mark Zona and Tommy Sanders, and I was thrown into the wolves at Bassmaster, but it was one of the best learning curves, quick learning curves that I'd ever gone through, because I learned so much more about how television is produced the right way, which is very, very important.
Yeah. And those are good things. And we're going to talk about that some, because that's good. Those kind of concepts of we think of it, when you come from a broadcast TV background, you think everything you think of everything in terms of being the best TV you could possibly make. But it's important for everybody out there that's doing social media to understand those concepts and try to get their video that they're doing, even if it's not on TV, to be the best that they can, then they can totally make it. So transitioning over to that, or segueing over to that, when you get in the boat with an elite angler, what does your dream guy do when you're shooting him? What does he do?
That's a great question, because there are some that a lot of them are better at it than others are. And you notice the people that are really good at it, because those are your favorite anglers, the Greg Hackneys, the Kevin Van Dams, the Brandon Poliniks, the Chris Zaldanes of the world. They know how to keep the action going, even when they're casting and reeling and nothing's going on. They know how to continue educating the crowd, because they know what to say and how to say it, because they're polished at it.
Right. Can you get better at that? Have you seen guys get better at that?
Yeah, I think they emulate each other, and I think that's a contagious factor or variable in the digital world. Where if you come up with a great idea, you got probably 2 years to exploit it before it turns into a trend, and then everyone's doing it. And then you got to stay ahead of the game by coming up with something new and innovative, so that you're constantly becoming more unique, and your uniqueness is what makes you ubiquitous in the marketing world, I think.
Yeah.
And let's take Brandon Palaniuk, for example. His series, this is his 5th season doing the BMP productions. And, you know, at first he was really the first one to have a truly lifestyle cinematic video production about what it's like to be a professional angler on the Elite Series. And now there's quite a few of them that are doing it because they saw the success that he was having. So yes, I believe that someone that doesn't understand the importance of it, or the quality, understand the quality of your product, they see other people doing it, and they understand how successful they are, because at the end of the day, it brings sponsorships to the table. Sponsorships bring monetary value brings more success. So I have seen people. Chris Zaldane is one of those guys that we all watched coming in as a rookie and becoming someone that's one of the best on camera anglers, I think, in the world, because he's constantly giving you excitement. He's constantly giving you information on what he's doing, either why he's unsuccessful or why he's successful. So yeah, I think you can, it's contagious. I think you can learn from other people and go from being not so good at it to good at it.
Yeah. And you know what? Back in the day, there were some people that would grumble and that on the ESPN Bassmaster shows that we tended to see the same people all the time, and they thought that maybe the producers had their favorites. And I mean, of course, everybody has people that they love, because you get to know somebody when you spend a day with them in the boat, or 2 days or whatever. But a lot of the reason why some of those people, like you said, the Greg Hackneys of the world and the Chris Zaldanes and the people that you love, the reason why they appeared so much is because they were so good and they were so entertaining, and they gave you, so as a producer or as a creator, they gave you so much to work with. And
so true.
I think that's something that everybody should, even if you're just taking a guide customer out, you want to entertain them and talk to them and have them really enjoy the day on the water, right?
I think so. And I think, you don't have to stay in the world that you live in to learn. I mean, you can go watch your favorite color commentator in NBA basketball or Major League Baseball or NFL or whatever, and you can emulate that person, or the sideline reporters, or even the camera guys. If you watch movies like Steven Spielberg movies, and you take information, you cherry pick this information that may make you better, that interests you. You learn how to do it, and you emulate those people. I can't even tell you how many people have told me that Mark Zona has inspired them to be better on camera and in front of a mic because of how good he is at what he does.
Wow, that's great.
Unbelievable. Like so many people. Do you know Mark Zona? Yeah, I know Zona. Well, what's he like? He's the same exact person you listen to and you see on television. He's funny, he's witty, he knows when. Like, I remember one time I was covering Mike Iaconelli at the Bassmaster Classic on Lake Conroe in Houston, and Ike caught like a 6.5 pounder, and it was the most boring. He was fishing with a football jig, and it was like watching paint dry.
Uh-huh.
And he hooked up on a big fish, and he landed, and he brought it to the boat, and nobody said a word. Tommy and Mark were totally silent. I can hear them on comm when I'm filming live or when we're covering a show, and no one said anything. They let the whole thing breathe and let it play out, and then Ike grabbed the fish by the lip and lifted it up. Zona goes, "Wow," in his deep deep, raspy voice. And I got chill bumps hearing him say that. And I went back and watched the show the following Sunday on ESPN. And I remember thinking, that is the kind of thing right there. You don't have to say a lot. You just have to know what to say and when to say it to make it stick. And that stuck with me forever.
Well, that Jake, but everybody can't be Zona. I mean, Zona is kind of a very unique person. Mercer's a very unique. Tommy, very, very unique. And everybody, one thing they all have in common too, and Tommy is hilarious. I don't know if everybody probably doesn't realize how funny Tommy Sanders is, but he's really funny. But the one thing they all three have in common is they're very smart. And I think that goes, I don't know how to say it, but it
goes
really
a long way.
It really plays into all their humor and how good they are. And Davey too, all very smart. So, but if you're not, but Zona's comfortable and he's got this incredible energy that, doesn't come along every day. So if you're not Zona, how do you get better?
I still think you emulate people that inspire you. You look for inspiration. And while you can't ever forget where you came from, because you can't, there's no one that's successful that didn't get there with help from someone else. Even if it's people that you don't know, that you emulate off of YouTube or whatever it is, those people deserve credit for helping you become who you are because you emulate those people. And I think that goes back to the part of the conversation we talked about where you have to have confidence in yourself and you have to be secure with yourself. And part of that is being honest with yourself and saying, hey man, I didn't learn how to storytell on my own. Shannon taught me how to storytell. She learned it from Jerry.
Yeah.
And in those interviews with Jerry in Wyoming, it all came full circle to me, and it taught me, it reminded me of where I came from and how I learned how to tell stories because I could hear everything that Shannon said and everything that Jerry said. And it's really, really important. And to be smart means you have to be studious. You have to be a student of the game. You just have to pay attention and be focused on what you're doing. And I think that's what separates what we call smart people from people that don't get that. And I'm not going to call anyone dumb or stupid because that's not true, but there's a difference. And there's a book called The Outliers. If you haven't read it, it's all about about being an expert at something and thinking outside the box. And it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert at something. And you can either do it in this amount of time or this amount of time. And if you're doing it in this amount of time, that means you're wasting time in between, acts of your study and your research to learn how to be good at something. If you're doing it in this short amount of time, it means you're doing it constantly. And I think constant, consistent, studious academia is the most important thing in learning to become whatever it is you want to become.
I love that.
You don't have to.
And I think a lot of guys that want to be professional fishermen, or let's leave it at that right now. The guys that want to be professional fishermen, they feel like they need to study how to be a good fisherman, but you also need to study how to be good. I mean, I've heard stories that Roland Martin, I think it's Roland, that his mother had him go to acting classes when he was young because she knew that's what he wanted to do, was to be a TV fishing personality. So he went to acting classes. And that's, I think sometimes it's overlooked by people that you have to be good at that side of it.
You do. I mean, you have to put, I look at news broadcasters, anchor people, or even game show hosts like Alex Trebek from Jeopardy, or, Vanna White, all she did was flip letters on Wheel of Fortune, or Pat Sajak. It didn't matter if they had the most depressing things in their lives going on at the time. When they came to work to host the Wheel of Fortune or Jeopardy or whatever it is, or The Price is Right, they had to put that same hat on and be that personality that made those shows successful. And I think when you think about that that tells you, you have to be able to focus, and you have to be able to put that hat on when the cameras are rolling and the lights come on, because you have to be that person. If you're not, inconsistency pokes through, and then your producers start looking for someone else because you're not as good at it as you once
Right.
were, or you're not as good at it as you thought you were.
Right. What about on stage, Jake? When you probably don't see a lot of guys on stage, because when y'all come in off the water, you're busy doing things, but I'm sure you see people in the media that you watch. What do you see guys doing well on stage?
Explaining. First of all, Mercer is an incredible talent.
Yeah.
Mercer is so good at initiating conversation on the stage, and he invokes concepts and things to talk about that are relevant to the moment, and that's part of the excitement. And I think he's a huge part of how the anglers answer the question and get to that point. Okay. Right. So I think he starts it, but I also think people like, again, we're going to say the same people, the Greg Hackneys of the world, the Brandon Polniks, these guys know what to say and how to say it. And it's about presenting yourself. It's about, learning how to not say, yeah. and picking your nose and little things like that on stage that are distracting. And they literally focus on the experience they just had on the water, and they know it doesn't have to be an infomercial for sponsors, because that comes naturally to them, and they don't have to go through this big long list to thank all the sponsors from one tip of their boat to the other end. They just know how to present themselves, and they tell, again, it goes back to, they tell the story.
Right.
How did that fish get me from 10th place into first place on the final day of Championship Sunday? Well, they tell the story on what changed, what was the pivotal point that day, and I think that's engaging to the audience.
Yeah. And, you always have to keep in mind too, and when you're, most of the people that'll be listening to this don't have a chance to talk to Mercer. They're fishing regionally or locally, and their MC or tournament director may not be as good at drawing things out. But the thing I think everybody needs to remember is that all those people that are watching, the reason why they're there is because the only reason they're watching you is because they want to figure out how you did it, and so if you can pass that information along to them, that's what they really want,
I agree.
And with a good story behind it. If you don't, especially if you don't have, Swindle's the master. If he doesn't have something insightful to say about the techniques he used or how the fishing was going that day, he will come across with some kind of great story to keep you entertained.
Mm-hmm. Even stories of failure, I think people engage in that because it creates a certain integrity and honesty from the person that's telling the story of failure. And I think you also learn from failure too. You probably learn more from failure than you do success. And I think you can turn a bad day into a great story by, again, being humble and confident enough in yourself to be able to admit why you failed that day. Even if you blew up and you had a 6-pound lead going into the championship of whatever level of tournament that you're fishing or whatever you're doing, if you blew the lead, you have to be able to suck it up and explain what happened to you. And if you can make that witty and funny, it's even that much better.
Yep. You know what, Jake? I think I'm going to have to make a two-parter out of this conversation because this is too good and we're almost already, out of time. So I think what I'll do is go to break right now and then actually close out this episode, and we'll come back. We'll have Jake back again next week and we'll finish this conversation with him because he's just got so many great things to share. So we'll be back. All right, I did not intend for that episode to be broken into two, but as you can see, there's so much to talk to Jake about. So hang tight and let me go edit some more, and I'll bring part 2 of this episode and this conversation with Jake Latendresse. I'll bring it to you next week on the Fishing Business Podcast. I'm going to close things out by quoting my favorite TV fisherman who always closed his show by saying, "This is dedicated to Dad," because he always had time to take me fishing. See you next time, y'all.